Dr. Patel, let's start with the science around kids. Are there any vaccines available for kids, young kids?
No, not yet. But good news, Nicole. Earlier this month, Pfizer actually filed their emergency use authorization amendment for children ages 12 to 15. And we should see action on that in the next several weeks. And already trials, as you know, for all three manufacturers, as well as others around the world, are underway for children as young as 6 months. So we do have hope that children will be able to be vaccinated, 12 to 15 first, and then the younger ones, probably by the end of this year or the first quarter of 2022. But to keep your child safe, like to make this a kid, I've seen cases of child abuse, and it's morally reprehensible to use those words about protecting your child, just to wear a mask. And you shouldn't be shamed, Nicole, if you want to wear a mask, even if you don't need to outdoors. Keeping yourself safe should not be something that's against the law.
Do kids still have the ability to transmit the virus from one to another? Can kids still spread the virus, Dr. Patel?
So we know the evidence supports that children, or let's be clear, ages 12 and over, we do see that they act almost like adults in the sense that you can see the rates of spread similar in ages 12 and over to other adults. And then we know that younger children are not as efficient or effective at transmitting the virus. I think the reason you're seeing all of us still putting into place asking children to wear masks, even if they're outdoors, is because of the variants. And we're now seeing transmission and variants in children that went from child to adult. So it's not common. But again, I do think children are not a significant risk, but it's a risk that I don't want to take with my child. And they've gotten comfortable with wearing masks. And in fact, the adults are complaining about it more than the children themselves.
Yeah, kids are adaptable. Frank Figliuzzi, what does this do to law enforcement? Do they want Tucker Carlson's viewers to start calling them this afternoon if they see a parent with a kid in a mask?
Yeah, there's a couple of serious issues with Carlson's comments. And I have to tell you, Nicole, I debated even coming on and talking about Tucker Carlson, because for him, this is really about ratings and relevancy, and he thrives on this kind of coverage. He'll probably have us on in clips tonight on his show and relish the fact that we're talking about it. But here's why I'm here today doing this with you. First, the problem is that law enforcement does not need calls for nonsense. The same hosts on Fox who every night tell us that our cities are in chaos with violent crime out of control are now telling us, call the police if you see a parent trying to care for their child and keep them healthy. The police don't need their calls. In fact, in many states, a false report to the police, and specifically a false claim of child abuse, is a crime in that state. So he's essentially telling people to commit a crime. The other problem with this, Nicole, is the nexus to violence. That's what concerns me the most. We have a track record with the Fox base, the Trump base, which are one and the same, over the last 4 or 5 years, committing acts of violence because of something somebody said who they view as a leader, whether it's ingesting aquarium sanitizer or whether it's the El Paso Walmart shooting subject shooting people because of words that Trump said, or whether it's the January 6th insurrection. Carlson seems not to understand the nexus between words and violence. And if he were responsible and mature, he'd get on his show tonight and he would say, I did not mean to tell people they should confront each other on the street about wearing a mask because I don't want violence. But I'm fearful that there will be violence if he doesn't retract the statement.
And Frank, just to sort of add to your point about the nexus with extremists motivated to commit violence, this is the National Terror Advisory Bulletin on Domestic Violent Extremism Warnings that was issued at the beginning of this year. DVEs, domestic violent extremists, motivated by a range of issues, including anger over COVID-19 restrictions, have plotted and on occasion carried out attacks against government facilities. Threats of violence against critical infrastructure, including the electronic, telecommunications, and healthcare sectors, increased in 2020, with violent extremists citing misinformation and conspiracy theories about COVID-19 for their actions. So I ask you, is incitement to conflict over a child wearing a mask. Part of what they're talking about in that National Terror Advisory Bulletin on DVE.
We've seen the entire intelligence community, including DHS and FBI, warn us repeatedly that domestic violent extremism is fueled by the media, social media, this polarization for profit that Fox News engages in. Getting people riled up is part of the strategy, and they seem not to care that there's violence attached to it. There's one more thing they seem not to understand, and that is that the Russian intelligence service and other adversarial governments actually amplify what goes on Fox News every night. You can't tell who posted first, the Russian GRU or Fox News or Tucker Carlson. And so every time he goes on and says this about vaccines, about masks, about COVID, you can see the Russian bots and trolls from Moscow start repeating it and amplifying it. He's essentially becoming a surrogate for our adversaries.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.